Shields up, Ironbreakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video. Welcome back to Monster Hunter, and today I figured it would be a good day for us to look back on the legacy of Monster Hunter World Iceborne. So I'm going to be ranking every single monster in that game. I'm not exactly sure how long this particular video is going to be. I might have to split it into two parts or maybe even more, depending on how much I wish to elaborate on each of these monsters. But I do want to set a couple of ground rules, and that is my basic level for every monster. Like if in terms of this is a neutral monster, like say this is the monster that I don't really hate or that I don't really like that much, that would be a C. Because I want to make sure that S is reserved for monsters that I consider to be extremely exceptional. And also keep in mind that whenever it comes to stuff like this, where you're ranking things, this is not an objective ranking. This is just my thoughts on the matter. And I might be ranking them based around like how much did I like their armor, how much did I like the fight, how much do I like the monster design. Like I'll try to explain the reason as to why I put every monster where I put it, and hopefully we'll come up with something interesting. I don't really see a lot of the monsters going all the way down to D because, you know, I just enjoy playing the game so much that I think that would be a hard thing to happen. I know that some people have the monsters that they most definitely hate and loathe and all of this stuff. But I don't know. I just don't think that there's that many monsters that I do. But the ones that I do really hate, I'll be sure to tell you guys why that is. Now, I've ordered them roughly by their order of appearance. This is not 100% correct because I don't really remember. But, you know, in some situations, I put monsters that were kind of like together. So like, for instance, Teostra and Lunastra. Makes sense to kind of like rank those kind of together, despite the fact that Lunastra showed up much later as a DLC. So, you know, I ordered them roughly in a way that I feel like it makes some sense. So naturally, we're going to be starting things off with Big Chungus, Great Gyros. And Great Gyros, like, I feel like he's just an average monster. He's an introduction monster, which is a little bit of a disadvantage. But he does have something working towards him, which is the fact that there was the greatest Gyros in Monster Hunter World. And I thought that was a pretty cool event because he could basically eat you and then vomit you in front of your friends. And they would be picking up decorations. Like, I still have a very fond memory where the greatest Gyros ate me and then he barfed me out. And for some strange reason, all the decorations that my friends were picking up were like really rare. I think like a couple of them even got like an attack deco, which in Monster Hunter World, those were actually pretty rare, like the level 1 attack deco. And they got a lot of really good decorations in that particular quest because Great Gyros ate me and then barfed me on top of them. That gives him a little bit of leeway. And I also really like the fact that he basically would just like swallow an Aptonoth whole and then just become Big Chungus. Like, I thought he had a lot of cool factor to him. And I also really like his design. So I'm going to give him a B. Usually for most introductory monsters, they would probably end up in the C, like I said, which is kind of like my neutral ground. But I did kind of like Great Gyros, so, you know, we're going to give our boy a B. I think that most of you will probably agree. But again, if you heavily disagree on any of my choices for some of these monsters, feel free to mention those in the comment section down below. Now, for our boy Jurattotis here, it's a really easy decision. He gets a D. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, Jurattotis. I really didn't like him. I don't like Jurattotis because he was one of the few. I think, as a matter of fact, I think he was the only water monster for a good long while, which meant that a lot of weapons required you to kill him repeatedly, which got really boring really fast. Like the first time you fight him, it's fine. But like, I don't know, after the 5th time I killed him, I was just like super done with him. He was just like a speed bump along the way. His fight is not particularly interesting. The most interesting thing that he would do would be like the turf war with Behemoth. So Jurattotis is just going to straight up go into D. And I'm sorry. I don't know if you guys are Jurattotis fan. Let me know. But like, I just didn't really like him at all. I would almost have preferred Plesioth. But maybe with a fixed hitbox. Okay. Now, we have our boy Phuket Pookie. I really like Phuket Pookie because of how colorful he is. And I think that kind of works in his favor because, you know, I would almost see him as a C, but the fact that he's so colorful and he's a new monster, I don't know. I kind of like Phuket a little bit more than just neutral. So we're going to pull him over into B territory here. But I reserve the right to eventually pull him down to C later down the line if I see that the B is too populated, depending on how well things go. Now, Toby Kadachi is an amazing monster. So my first instinct would be to bring him to A, because I think that his fight is very interesting. I think that just the monster itself, like the flying squirrel combined with like a snake or whatever the hell it was, and the electrical and the fur raising and whatnot, like even the introduction, the cinematic where Toby Kadachi gets introduced, I actually use that cinematic often to do thumbnails because it would be a really vivid image of your characters, what's attacking me. Like, I thought that was really cool, but I'm gonna bump him down. I'm gonna bump him down to B, and the reasoning behind that is because, once again, very much like Jurattotis, a million weapons needed you to go kill Toby Kadachi. And I said, like, there's a lot of factors when it comes to my ranking of monsters. Some of them do include like stuff like how did I like hunting him, and you get burned out on hunting Toby Kadachi because you have to hunt him way too often, particularly if you're trying to like complete sets and whatnot. Like, I still have to go kill either a high rank or a low rank Toby Kadachi to go do like all of the gunlands, which is something that I really, really did not appreciate. Now, Kuluyaku. Kuluyaku is one of the best boys in Monster Hunter World. And I don't care if you disagree. I just don't care. Kuliaku is amazing. Now, Kuliaku is not a super interesting fight. He's very simple, but just the monster design, the way that he's just like going around stealing stuff from the hunters, and then he steals the eggs from the herbivores and stuff, and then he brings them over to his little nest, and whenever he's tired, he goes to his little nest, starts pecking at the egg, and like those little animations, the little details on the stuff that he does are amazing. And on top of it, he's a part of the Final Fantasy XIV crossover event, where instead of picking up a rock like he usually does, he tries bashing your skull in with rocks. And it's like, I think that even for some hunters that maybe are fighting him for the first time, they can still get surprised over the amount of stun damage that Kuliaku is able to dish out, which, it's interesting with that. But in the Final Fantasy XIV crossover event, he just straight up picks up a crystal, he grows, you get the chocobo music, which just elevates him that much further. I think Kuliaku is a really cool monster and deserves all of the props. All the kudos for Kuliaku. And you can also wear his head, which is a million times better than wearing a Wiggler head. I mean, seriously, who wears Wiggler heads? Like, what is wrong with you people? Like, you need to examine your life choices, okay, if you're wearing a Wiggler head. Anyway, let's continue. We have the Baroth here. So Baroth, I like the fact that it's very satisfying that when you break off the mud, you're just like part broken, part broken, part broken. It was also very useful if you were trying to level up the Wildspire section of the Guiding Lands, because you could bust them open like a lot of breaks. Very nice. But overall, he hasn't really changed that much. He does have the teacup attack, which I really like. And then he just like charges at you. That is cool. I don't know. I'm very indecisive between a B and a C. I think I'm put him at B, because like if I put him at C, I'd probably put Phuket at C as well. I just kind of like good boy Baroth. I think Baroth is really cool. And I have Anjanath, which is actually, I think, if I remember correctly, the first monster that was revealed in the first Monster Hunter World trailer. And Anjanath is a solid A in my book. I really like how brutal he is. He very much like he's the T-Rex essentially of Monster Hunter World, but he's got his little underdeveloped wings that he pops up whenever he's really mad, and he's got like his little nostrils that come up, which I thought was really, really creative. So we're gonna put him on A. I also like the fact that he was still able to surprise me a lot of times in the first couple of times that I would be fighting him, because he would start his little attack with breathing out the little fire fumes, and then eventually just comes out with the big flames that even when he was tempered, he would still sometimes catch me off guard with that stuff. Like, you're just fighting him and suddenly a big blast of fire comes through and you're toasted. Like, that's it. You're done. It's over. Finito. Then we have the Rathians. I've always been a big fan. I mean, and I say Rathians, the Rathian and the Rathalos couple. The Wraths, not the Rathians, the Wraths. We have the Wraths. I've always been a big fan of both Rathian and Rathalos. I like Rathalos a little bit more, but you know, that would be like decimals. I think I'm going to put these in A pretty much. Like, they're just really well represented in world. They're not doing anything like super special, I don't think. I mean, obviously they have their really Air Force, like when Rathalos picks up good boy Anjanath over here, like chars him. Like, that's really cool. But yeah, we're going to put them in A for now. At least. And I have a feeling that probably most of the Wraths are going to end up in A, even their variants and whatnot, but we shall see. Then we have the Tzitzi Yaku. Now, the Tzitzi Yaku is interesting. He does have a little flash mechanic, but other than that, it's not really like a super amazing fight. What I guess one of the things that kind of pushes him maybe a little bit above neutral is the fact that every now and then you'd be fighting another monster, right? He comes into the area, flashes the other monster, or flashes you and then just leaves. Like, his AI was, at least it seemed it was programmed for sometimes just wandering into the middle of a fight where you're fighting, flashing, and peacing out. It's just like, that's really funny. Makes me want to give him a B, but at this rate, we're not going to have a lot of them on C, so I'm just going to put him on C for now. Next we have Legianna, or Legianna. I'm not actually sure. I think it's supposed to be Legianna, right? I forget, but we'll just call it Legianna for now. And Legianna is actually a really cool monster, and it's very fun to fight, and it's got really cool looking armor. So I'm gonna put her on A. Legianna is a great monster. I love her little loops and stuff like that. So I'm gonna give her an A for now. I do reserve the right to potentially upgrade. We'll see. We'll see. Then we have Paolumu. Paolumu is basically Mickey Mouse. Well, not Mickey Mouse. His icon's like Mickey Mouse, but white. He's all cute and fluffy, but he's a rat with wings. Fighting him is cool because he uses the wind thing. He puffs himself up. I think he's a very creative monster. I'm considering just straight up taking him to S, just because of how interesting his design is. And the fight itself can still be surprising, particularly when he does the thing where he just like runs around, then comes at you, all of a sudden slams you with his tail. I like monsters that use their tail like that. Very indecisive with Paolumu. Is he on the level of Tzitzi? We're putting him at A for now, but I do reserve the right to take him up to S, potentially. Potentially. Shall see. Then we have, what's this guy's even? Great Gyros. We have the Great Gyros. Where am I going to put the Great Gyros? I think Great Gyros is going to get a C. He's not, at least in my book, he's not super interesting. I like the fact that every now and then he would come up and he like bite and paralyze the monsters, particularly Odogoron. It was really useful. But beyond that, yeah, sure, he's got para. It's weird that you can chop his tail. He's like one of the smallest monsters whose tail you can chop. There's so many monsters that you look at him, you'd be like, man, I should totally be able to chop this guy's tail. And you can't, but then you can chop Great Gyros' tail. It's kind of weird. Yeah, we'll keep him at C for now. Then we have good old Roly Boy. Roly Boy. Breaking his stuff is extremely satisfying. Breaking Radabon's spines is just very, very, very satisfying, particularly because I love Blast. So having a monster that is vulnerable to Blast is really cool. I like the fact that he can also regain his bones during the fight, and that there's this whole thing about how he's got tar all over him and then he just rolls around and stuff and he attaches the bones to himself. I think it's a really cool design of a monster. I'm going to put him at A. I think he's really cool. I'm going to put him there. Odogoron, I know that a lot of people think that this dude is a straight up S tier, and I do think he's pretty cool. I really do like Odogoron, and he was actually the first monster whose quest I failed. This was my first failed quest. I don't remember if it was in high rank or in low rank, but I think this was my first failed quest. I'm not talking about carding, because like, the first time that I played Monster Hunter World, I've carded and whatever, but Odogoron was the first time that I actually failed a quest. I think for that, he's going to go for A, straight up. Okay. This one's a rough one. Zora Magdaros is a rough one. I know that a lot of people would want me to put him at D because they don't like the fight. But see, the thing is, I do like the fight. And not only I like Zora Magdaros' fight, I actually think it's a really cool fight if you do it in multiplayer. I talked with Gaijin about this on the Third Fleet podcast. We both kind of agree that this fight could have been done better, could have been more interesting, but the potential that I see for this fight makes me want it to be a B. Like, I really like everything about it. I just feel like they fail a little bit on the execution, because ultimately the most efficient way of destroying this monster is spamming cannons at him. That's pretty much it. You just go to the cannons, spam the cannons at him, and eventually he dies. I also like the fact that was it only for Iceborne that it does? Yeah, secret skills only came with Iceborne. I like the fact that his armor is what gives you artillery secret, although he's not really involved in that process. You basically get that stuff from the guiding lands. But still, I think he's above average, and I think if the fight was better designed in a way that it actually incentivized hunters to go back on his body, and there would be advantages for you to do that during the fight, I think that would be much more interesting than what the fight is right now. So, the potential brings it up to B, but that's as far as it goes. But I really do. Then we have Basil Goose. And Basil Goose is hands down one of my favorite monsters. And if this was just a Monster Hunter World list, it would be an S. But because this is Monster Hunter World Iceborne, it's going to be an A. Because there's a couple of disadvantages that he has versus his sibling, which we'll talk about when we get to seating Basil Goose. But overall, love this monster. Love the interactions that I had with him. I've told the story a million times about how he actually made me fail one quest because I got so upset over the fact that he kept invading and ruining the quest that I was just like, I'm going to kill you. And went after him, burned through a bunch of my resources, and then ended up dying anyway. But still, that rivalry, like, it was very satisfying, and I really love this set. I used pieces of his set for the longest time. Like, you'll see, like, his helmet on a lot of my builds throughout my Monster Hunter World videos. And the reasoning was because I like this set, I like the monster, I like the design, I like the skills. I like just about everything about Basil Goose. Again, if this was World, he would be S for me, but it's World and Iceborne. That changes things. Diablos. Diablos is an annoying fight, as far as I'm concerned. Diablos made me go to Lance. It's still satisfying when you break its horns and whatnot, and I do still think that it is a cool fight. But there's nothing I find too special about Diablos, personally. I don't know about everybody else. I just find him to be a little bit annoying to fight. His weapons actually annoyed me as well. The fact that most of the time, whenever it came to raw damage in World, it was just like, well, it's Diablos weapons. Like, you'd get the Diablos Charge Blade. I forget what the name of it was. And that was the one. That was the one that everybody would be using, at least at the time, until we eventually got different weapons from some of the other endgame monsters that came along. But Diablos was the thing. I'm very indecisive between C and the thing that makes me want it to be B is because he did have his little turf thing where you could like trigger the screeching creatures, and he would come up and grab whatever monster he was fighting, and that little trap thing does pull it a little bit ahead. So I guess we're going to put him on B. Then we have Black Diablos. And Black Diablos, I almost want to straight up put the D. We're going to put it in C. We're going to be neutral. Because the thing about Black Diablos, it's not about a difficulty thing, by the way, because I know that a lot of people will look at it and be like, oh, you just didn't like how hard it was. It's not, no, it's not the fact that it was hard. It's the fact that it was annoying. Like when you do the AI of a monster to a point where it has very little openings, and every time that it goes underground, it basically just like comes up into this flailing, crazy, whatever the hell Black Diablos likes to do when she comes up from the ground. I just didn't like the pacing of the fight. And it's not because it was hard, it's because it was boring that you would have to constantly wait out for her to, and sure, you can bring in the screamer pods and all of that stuff, but ultimately I don't think they made the fight any less boring. I did not like the fight. I don't dislike it enough to bring it down to D. I almost kind of do, but usually I just pick up my lance, go at her, boom, done, be done with it. Then we have Pink Rathian. I'm going to put her in A, right next to the other Wraths. And I think Azure Rathalos also goes to A. I think these are all very close. It's like these would be decimals. Azure Rathalos is a little bit more annoying. I could see some people bringing Azure Rathalos down to a B because of his annoying factor. But depending on whether they're talking about World or Iceborne, I don't remember. Have I fought Azure in Iceborne? I don't remember if I did. But like in World, you could basically flash him down all the time. I don't remember if in Iceborne you could do that too. But basically, he was really hard for me to deal with until I realized I can just bring him down with flash pods every time he goes up. And then it just became a cakewalk. Because every time he goes up, which is like his biggest advantage, we just be like, pew, done. Like, come on down and just abuse him. So that fight stopped being as annoying. And I still like the fact that he was basically a Rathalos on steroids. I thought that was cool. Yeah. Then we have Devil Joe. I like Devil Joe. Devil Joe's fun. I actually think that his fight was particularly hard. But it was a good kind of challenge. I feel like some people thought that he was too annoying or whatever, but I really liked his design. Like he was just this monster that would go after other monsters, beat the crap out of them, or go after you and just destroy you with all of his attacks. And breaking down his patterns and trying to figure out the openings that he would have was very interesting to me in Monster Hunter World. Particularly doing like his Tempered quest, which was a special event because it was on the level of Elder Dragon, even though he wasn't an Elder Dragon. I thought that was really cool. I really liked him. And yeah, that's pretty much it. They have Dodogama. And I know that a lot of people would put Dodogama all the way up in S tier, but not me. I'm going to be putting him in B. I don't think he's that special. Like, he looks kind of cool, I guess. He buries himself in the area of the Elder's Recess, and he gorges on the crystals, and he shoots little explosions at you. I guess that's kind of cool. I guess the fact that he shot out explosions at you was the thing that I liked the most. His little blast procs and whatnot. And I liked it whenever he showed up in a fight and just puke fire at the other monster that I was fighting. That would be cool. But yeah, it's I think he's still just a B. He's not really that special to me. Now, here we have good old Jay Leno. I remember Kieran had a lot of problems with him at the start. Where am I put Jay? I mean, I really like Radabon more than Uragon. Uragon did have a cool armor set. I like Uragon's armor set, and it's got guard up and all of that. I guess he gets a B, mostly because I like cracking his chin. Very satisfying to crack his chin wide open with a gun lance. I also really like the section of tail that you can chop off him, and it's cool that you can mine his back as well. So yeah, he gets a solid B. He gets a solid. Then we have the lava fish. Lava fish, extremely annoying. Almost makes me want to give it a D, but giving it a D would imply that he was as bad as Mudfish. So I guess Lavazioth is going to get a C. And he gets a C also because I do like the mechanic of him going back into the lava and, his armor weakens and you can hit him again. I think that's an interesting mechanic, but at the same time, it can be very frustrating if he takes too long to go back into the lava and you're basically stuck fighting him in his hardened state. That could get really annoying. So he just gets a C. He gets a pass. Okay, so this one sucks. We don't talk about this one. He's just straight up a D. Now, Kieran is actually a really cool monster. I would not put him on D. Matter of fact, I would take him all the way up to B. He can't go any higher because I do feel that some of the mechanics on his fight are, particularly when you're talking about tempered during world and arch-tempered even, a lot of his mechanics could go pretty crazy. It could get pretty friggin' crazy. He can also be very frustrating depending on like the weapon sharpness that you have by the time you get to him and whatnot. But I still think that he's a really cool designed monster. Like, this is a monster that doesn't even attack you on first sight. I don't remember if the Arch-Tempered did. I don't think he did. None of his versions actually just attack you on first sight. They're just walking around through the whatever zone they're in. I think is always Coral Highlands, right? I don't think he shows up in... No, he does. He does also show up in Hoarfrost Reach. But that's only an Iceborne. But yeah, I like Kieran, but I do think that some of his mechanics a little bit annoying. Now, Kushala is one of those monsters that I really, really dig in terms of like monster design, but I hate fighting. I really don't like fighting Kushala. It's got some ups and downs. I kind of enjoy picking him apart in terms of like figuring out his patterns. Particularly for the arch-tempered version when I came up with the sword and shield build that I did using the other Kushala parts. So I might end up putting it on B, but at the same time, no. You're going to go to C Kushala. Like, I'm sorry. Ultimately, Kushala just ended up being a very annoying fight, so he's just going to go straight into D. Sorry. It is what it is. Next up, we got Val Hazak, one of the new monsters and a really, really cool design of a monster. I really liked Val Hazak. I thought that it was really cool. I'm even considering if I shouldn't put Val Hazak on S tier. I just might. I reserve the right to eventually move him. But for now, I do think we're going to put Val Hazak as S tier. Because I just think he's got a really cool mechanic with the Fluvia stuff and the fact that it basically drains the life of other monsters. Yeah, that was cool. His little vomit comet stuff. The fact that the when you fight him in the Rotten Vale, you can also drop the spikes on him. That's also brutally satisfying. He's very interesting. The frustrating part was trying to figure out his elemental weaknesses just based on the information that the game gave you, which was, in my opinion, not that great. If you go to Kiraniku or some other third-party website, you could figure this stuff out instantly. But like, the information that the game gave you on how I think you were supposed to burn the flesh on his back, and then he would be more vulnerable to dragon, and the whole thing. His elemental stuff kind of like takes it down a little notch, but ultimately, I still really enjoyed Val Hazak. I thought it was really cool. Teostra. I really respect Teostra from a design standpoint. And I think that his fight is also very interesting. The problem with the Elder Dragons, though, is that you always end up relying on Elder Seal to manage them, whereas like in previous games, you would use Poison, which is much more reliable than Elder Seal. So that does bump it up a little bit. I guess Teostra, he gets an A because ultimately I still like the design of the monster, and I really liked the struggle that I kind of had to overcome him the very first time, where I even made a dedicated set with defense up and all kinds of other nonsense because I didn't know how to play the game that great at the time, right? But I still respect him a lot as a monster. I greatly enjoyed him. Now, Lunastra, on the other hand, the hell with it. I'm actually going to bring Lunastra straight down to a C. And the reasoning behind that is because, you know, Lunastra's got her Nova. Her Nova is really annoying, and there were ways to predict it. I even told people, like, once you get to a certain point of her just, like, glowing with her particle effects, flash her, and you'll trigger the Nova manually, and that will solve a couple of problems, right? But one of the issues that I also had with Lunastra was just, I felt early in Iceborne, and I don't know if this, I think this got patched later on, they nerfed the health on her horns, but like early in Iceborne, I remember needing her horns, and I had to make a hammer set specifically to break her horns, and I remember pretty much every single hit that I did in that fight was to the head. Like, maybe not every single hit, but 90% of the hits that I did were blows to the head. And the second I completely broke her horns, the next hit killed her. So I was just like, okay, this is crazy. There's something wrong with this. I'm talking, we're running a set with part break. Wait, there was no part breaker secret. Or was there? Actually, I think there was part breaker secret. If there was part breaker secret, my set had part breaker secret. If there wasn't, then it had full part breaker. It was a hammer set, full on for damage, part breaker, and only like 1 point in KO or something like that. And it was crazy. The amount of hits that I had to deal on that head before I cracked the horns. And the second I cracked the horns, I instantly killed it. So, yeah. That was very annoying. But, you know, that's besides the point. We all know the horror stories that we've seen in the Guiding Lands of Lunastra glitching out and just doing like 7 Novas in a row or something like that. So, yeah. There was some issues with friggin' Lunastra. Then we have Nergigante. Nergigante is a pretty cool dude. It's pretty cool. Does he deserve A rank, though? I mean, S rank. Does he deserve S rank or A rank? I think I'm going to give him A rank because his Arch-Tempered version had some nonsense. And I think we can all agree on that. The pouncing attack that had like no tells whatsoever. It's like, pounce, dead. You're going to go to A because your Arch-Tempered version had issues. But all of the lore around Nergigante, like nature, using it to correct the imbalances and whatnot, extremely cool. Really, really liked it. And I just realized that I actually put Kultaroth in the wrong spot. Kultaroth was from... No. Kultaroth is in the right spot. For a second, I thought that Kultaroth only came around during Iceborne, but no. But yeah, Nergigante gets an A. Pretty cool monster. Really like fighting him. Very satisfying to bust up his spines and whatnot. And he was the speedrunner's favorite because he also had like a glass jaw. Everybody would be beaten up on Nergigante because he just gets destroyed so easily once you got to endgame gear. Yeah. Xenojiva. Xenojiva is going to get a B. Don't get me wrong, I do like Xenojiva, but I feel like certain weapons, I feel like he wasn't really designed with certain weapons in mind. Well, my first time facing off against Xenojiva, I was actually using Sword and Shield. I was just thinking to myself, this is... like, I don't know what to say. This doesn't feel good at all, fighting this monster with Sword and Shield. So, yeah. We're gonna bump him down a little bit. I do love the way that his set looks. I love the way that he looks. I think the fight is very interesting, but at the same time, it is a bit of a frustrating fight, and his Arch-Tempered version was insane. In terms of just like the amount of health it had. It just felt like too much. So we're gonna bump him down to a B. Still a pretty cool monster though. Kultaroth. Kultaroth. I almost want to give Kultaroth a D. But that wouldn't be fair because the main reason I want to give Kultaroth a D is because I hated the RNG that it brought into the game. Like, the fight itself is actually pretty cool. The monster, the design of the monster is friggin' awesome. Like, the first time I actually fought her, It's S. That's how good it was. I loved it. I thought it was amazing. The 200th time I fought her, it was definitely a D. I hated it. I was so done with it. And that's the problem. That's actually a problem that we have in some of these monsters for me personally, because it taints my opinion of the monster itself. The fact that you forced me to fight this monster more than you should have. And that taints the monster a lot. I'm still going to bring her up. Still going to bring her to B. As a reminder that her fight and her design and all of that stuff is actually awesome. But it can't go any higher than B because it brought a lot of negative stuff into the game. And it is associated with Kulftaroth, whether we like it or not. Like I said, there's a lot of factors that go into whether or not I like a monster. And this is one of them. So, ancient... No, this is... Actually, I don't know which one of them is the ancient. Let's say the one with the green stuff is the ancient. Is there actually like a label on these? I don't remember which one's icon is the ancient, which one's the normal. Let's say the one with more nonsense on it is the ancient one, and this one is the normal one. That's what I'm assuming. So normal Leshen is an A. Is it an A though? Normal Leshen is a B. And the reason he is a B is because he's associated with the Witcher event, which I really, well, not even event, it's just Witcher quest line. I really enjoyed the Witcher quest line, crossover, whatever you want to call it. I loved it. I thought the quest line itself was amazing. The monster itself, on the other hand, I don't think the monster's that interesting. I feel like he's too small. He's just a small monster, ultimately. So... it's not even that he's annoying to fight. It's just I don't think he's that fun to fight after you fought him a couple of times. Doesn't really stand the test of time. And his ancient brother gets even less. He gets a C. He gets a C. And the main reasoning why he gets a C is because I enjoyed the challenge of that fight, figuring out that fight. Because he was also, I think he was scaled to 4 players, so you kind of needed 4 players to kill him. Well, you could solo it if you were skilled enough, but ultimately his HP was scaled for 4 players. But still, yeah. He's going to get a C. I almost kind of want to give him a D, because I actually didn't like that fight very much. I thought it was all right, but, you know. Then we have Behemoth. And there's 2 very different versions of Behemoth, right? You have your normal Behemoth and you have Extremoth. And I know that a lot of people didn't like this fight, particularly because, once again, it forced 4-player co-op, which not everybody was up. I can understand that. I'm gonna put Behemoth as an S. Because, personally, I still really enjoyed it. I kind of want to bring it down to an A, but I don't think it would be fair. It's like, there are these conflicting things about Behemoth, which is, he brought an armor set that essentially became the meta for Monster Hunter World, which was the Drachen set, which some people are still like, why can't you say Drachen? Because that's not how you're supposed to pronounce it. But the Drachen set had some problems in terms of, just the ridiculous amount of meta that it brought to the game. But looking at the rest of the list and looking at the things that I still want, the monsters that I still want to talk about and some of the considerations to have in regards to that, I think that there are other monsters that end up in there that also have problems with their sets. And ultimately, I feel like it was a fantastic crossover fight. It was a really creative, fight. And on top of it, the extreme version, I would still consider to be the hardest thing in the whole game when you were at the appropriate level. Like, I don't know with Master Rank gear because I haven't hunted him with Master Rank gear, but like Extremoth, from my memory of everything that I've played in both Monster Hunter World and Iceborne, I still think he was the hardest thing I've ever done. And it was very satisfying to break that fight down and actually I guess it speaks to the fact that a long time ago I was basically just like raiding WoW and not playing any other game. So having the crossover between those two worlds and the mechanics of raiding, and I know that a lot of people in the player base don't like this, but this is my opinion. This is my list. You can do your own list and talk about it there. But yeah, that's how I personally feel about it. But I'm looking at the time that I've been recording this video, and we're at 41 minutes, and I think I've only just finished the monsters in Monster Hunter World. I'm going to be splitting this into 2 parts, 100%. And in the next part, we're going to be doing all of the new monsters that were introduced with Iceborne. I hope you guys are enjoying this. Let me know in the comment section down below whether or not you enjoy it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you all very much for watching. And hit the like button if you did enjoy it. Hit the dislike button if you did not enjoy it. Subscribe if you usually enjoy my content. And hit the bell notification icon so that you actually receive my content in your... I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong. Stay safe. Peace out.